Thanks a lot. I'm very happy to be here, especially because transformation and behavior change has been quite an area of passion for me. I have 13 years of work experience so far. Over the last 5 years, I've been primarily spending time on these two topics. I've helped over 20 clients on transformation and especially the softer aspects of the transformation across primarily the different Asia Pacific regions. India, Singapore and Middle East is where my work primarily spans across. So I'm very excited to share some learnings that me personally and also BCG as an organization globally have been able to gather by helping our clients transform successfully. Let me start with a quick question. How many organizations do you think are undertaking a transformation right now? What percentage of organizations? Or 95? Okay. How many of, can you raise your hand if there is some form of transformation is happening in your organization right now? Not necessarily in HR department. Yeah. I think that's a little bit low. I think it's probably around 20%. But the study shows 1 in 3 organizations is undertaking some form of transformation at any given point in time. And this number, in my opinion, is probably understated, as someone said here, right? 95% of organizations is undergoing transformation. However, when change happens, success is rare. Right? BCG did a study studying all the transformations that happened over a 10-year period of time and also looking at those organizations' performance over 1 to 5 years within the 10 years. And the outcome was only 25% of those organizations that undertook transformation actually succeeded. But that is good news, which is if they succeed, they deliver. So when we looked at those organizations which succeeded actually, they demonstrated success in 3 different areas. And all of them demonstrated success in all of these 3 different areas, right? The first is the value creation aspect, which is financial value, being able to, successful transformation of course results in sustained gain, sustained profits over a longer period of time. They end up creating engines of growth for the organization. But the story doesn't stop there. They also create new capabilities which becomes a source of competitive advantage for these organizations. And they also create a new culture which in some sense is an irreversible thing, right? So once you create a new target culture, that becomes an irreversible source of advantage for you. But how do you get this transformation right? Is there a secret sauce for successful transformation? Of course not, right? But there is one dominant factor for successful transformation. Can anyone guess? One dominant factor which really increases your odds of success in transformation. Leadership, mindset, culture, stakeholder buy-in. Anyone else? People, yeah, which sort of encompasses everything, and that's what I was going to say. So if your transformation is human-centric, then the odds of succeeding increases by almost 2 times. And this is coming after studying 700 transformation across various parts of the world, and there are multiple other data points which is behind this. And this information this study is available online. You can go and have a look at it. Happy to share it as well. I will probably draw your attention only to the first 3 numbers here. The first is the odds of success of transformation increases by 90% when the change management is holistic. By holistic, what we mean is it covers both the hard and the soft aspects. Yeah? And the odds of success increases by 50% when the leaders are engaging their organization with heart, not just head and hands. By head we mean ambitious vision. I think this is something most of the transformation, most of the leaders get right. Hands is changes in the operating model, changes in the organization so that they can enable the organization to achieve the vision. Heart is the people aspect again. Are they helping their people to change? Right? So that again increases the odds of success. And finally, it's extremely important to have a dedicated team to take care of this. And then you will see why on the next slide. And that again increases the success of transformation by around 50%. In summary, sustained results in transformation requires both the what and the how. The what, as you can see, is growth, cost, strategy, and so on and so forth. And as you can imagine, this gets an inordinate amount of focus in most of the organization, right? So it has a very high degree of focus. And in most transformation, the how also gets focus, but it gets lost in translation. As the transformation starts proceeding, as you are hitting roadblocks, the focus shifts back a lot to the what, and the how is lost somewhere. And what's the result of it? The result of it is you may achieve results in short term, but in long term, you will not succeed. And the fact that the organizations are focusing on the what more than the how is a little bit obvious, right? Can anyone guess why? Why would an organization? I think it, like when I put up this slide, I'm sure I saw a lot of heads nodding. So it's not rocket science. Of course, all of this is important for a successful transformation. But why would then organizations focus a lot more on what? What could be the reason? Theory versus execution. Can you elaborate on it a little bit more? Yes. So theory, yeah, that's a very good perspective. Yeah. So the what is in some sense a foundation, and the how is how do you get there, right? Yeah. On the ground. Yes. Yes. That's one of the key reasons why the organizations actually focus on what? It's more tangible. And as humans and all the systems around us, it's all wired to look at what's tangible, what can be measured. And that's what tells whether you are successful or not, right? And therefore, it's important you put in place a dedicated team, a dedicated system which takes care of the how. Otherwise, it will be lost in translation. Yeah. Now, as you can see on this slide, there are 4 pillars in the how. There's leader enablement, the desired culture, leader enablement, people engagement, executional certainty. So what I was planning to do in this session is to give you a combination of tips, insights, and case studies on each of these 4 pillars. And then I would also encourage you to ask questions, because I could definitely not package everything what BCG had and what I had in these few slides. So let me try to run through this as fast as possible. I also understand we are running, of course, around 1 hour late. So let's have a 2-question break after I finish each pillar. So after each pillar, I would encourage 2 questions from the audience. And if there are more questions, I'm sitting right next door for another half an hour. So I'm there to answer your questions. Okay. Let's start with the culture. Why is culture important? It creates an environment in which the change can thrive. It's what enables the change in the organization at a large scale. And the problem with culture is it's one of the most fluffiest element, right? You can't. There is no how to describe a culture. It was in fact one of the questions we had in our survey. Hardly 20% of the audience could describe the culture in a very specific way. And that is the key there. So it's important to quantify it, to measure it, to track it. And the more you do it, the more you will succeed in your culture change aspect. How to do it? I'm happy to touch upon this if this is one of the questions, but there are multiple tools out there in the market today. We have our own tool to measure culture on 7 different dimensions. There are many such tools. So you can take one of these tools and keep running these tools at some frequency to be able to measure the culture. The second is articulation of the culture. A lot of organizations, the mistake they do is they create a really inspiring culture aligned with their strategy in the boardroom. By the time it reaches to the front line, if you ask them, 90% of the people will not even know what is the culture. Even if they know, they might remember few keywords. They will not know what it means for them. Agree? Yeah. So, what you have to do is, you will have to not articulate just the elements like growth mindset, customer obsession. These are elements of culture. Don't just articulate. Don't just define culture in terms of these key elements, but rather get as specific as possible. And you will see an example of this on the next slide. So let me elaborate this more on the next slide. And the third one I want to talk about is activation of leaders. When it comes to behavior change, there's a little bit of a parent-child analogy that's happening in organization, right? Most of the employees look to their leaders, and whatever they do, they also end up doing subconsciously. Any amounts of training you do for employees on the ground will not replace the leadership role modeling when it comes to culture change. And therefore, you will have to spend time with the leaders. You will have to, and for most of the leaders, they have much better and bigger things to chase than changing culture and changing behavior. So you will have to give them, within their limited bandwidth, the support required for them to adopt these new behaviors and also demonstrate it in a way to their employees so that they can be inspired to follow them. Yeah. And the fourth one is one of the most important things. So none of the employees are behaving in a certain way because they have bad intentions, right? All of us have good intentions and we are behaving in a specific way because that is a signal we are getting from organization. We may not be deciding quickly today because maybe the system is giving us signals that if you do any mistake, I will punish you. Yeah? Or we may not be collaborating with our peers because the system is giving us some signal saying you'll have to compete. Only if you compete, you can succeed in this organization. So once you define your target culture, you will have to carefully see what are the issues in your current organizational context which is creating the existing behaviors and how can you change it to drive new behaviors. Again, I have some examples of this in subsequent slides, so we'll discuss it in more depth there. Okay, so I'm going to discuss one case study highlighting few insights which we discussed in the previous slide. So we're talking about a global digital company, one of the biggest companies of our generations, extremely successful, but as they were growing bigger and bigger, they had the issues of any bigger organization, siloed working, a culture of competition among people, bureaucracy was replacing innovation. Yeah? I'm sure you can relate to a lot of these issues, right? So, and they wanted to undertake a major transformation, not just culture. They undertook one of, again, the largest transformation of our generation, and it was one of the most successful transformation as well. But one of the key elements in the transformation is culture, and they defined the 5 elements of their culture framework. Growth mindset was central to it, as you can see here. But they didn't stop that. They, in fact, defined key behaviors for each of these elements, as you can see. It's not just diversity and inclusiveness, but they went ahead to say, in your discussions, examine your assumptions, make a habit of asking questions, ensure all voices are heard. And these behaviors in the first place were defined through multiple focus groups and workshops across all levels of organization. And then they were also communicated and embedded in the organization through multiple different ways. Yeah, there were behaviors related to meetings put up in all the meeting rooms. Yeah, and the employees were measured measured on behaviors, and they were given feedback based on that, and so on and so forth. So these behaviors sort of got embedded to the employees, and they now you can see like they understand what is diversity and inclusivity in the context of this organization. So this is what I was talking about, articulation. Now, how did they change the context to embed these new behaviors? Multiple initiatives on this slide. Let me focus on a few. Maybe the work environment. They changed their cubicle-based office spaces to team rooms to encourage collaboration. Yeah. Digital tools. They introduced a lot of digital tools like Slack, Trello, the common ones which most of you will be aware of. These were introduced in the organization, and the usage of them was nudged throughout the organization, and the usage was analyzed, which resulted in analytics, which resulted in insights like department 1 and department 2 are not actually talking to each other. This is possible with these digital tools now. Yeah. So they went to that extent. Maybe let me take one or two more examples. People practices. So they included the culture and the behaviors as part of all of the recruiting practices. So they were looking for a cultural fit. They started looking for a cultural fit as a result of this transformation. They were not doing that before this particular transformation. They changed their organization structure. This was a big thing. They changed their organization structure from a value chain based organization structure, product management, product marketing, and product maintenance, and so on and so forth, to a solution based organization structure, because they wanted to be more responsive to the customers. So once they became a solution based organization, cloud solutions, software solutions, and so on and so forth, they became more agile and more responsive to the customers. Small break now. Any questions on this? Shall I move on to the next one then? Okay. Yeah. Yep. Good question. So the question is, can we apply all of these levers in my organization? The answer is, I'll go back to what I said. The choice of context levers depends upon, number one, the root causes of your existing behaviors, and number two, your target behaviors. Right? So for example, the work environment, cubicle space to team rooms applies for them. It may not apply in a more traditional industry-based organization. Yeah? So it really depends upon the current and the target behaviors. Can I move on to the next one? The next pillar is leader enablement. So this is about equipping the leaders with necessary skills, capabilities, resources, so that they can drive successful change in the organization. The first learning here is case for change. It's a little bit of a done to death thing, right? Okay, of course, there needs to be a case for change. There needs to be a burning platform if there is a transformation. Let me add a small nuance to it. A lot of times what happens and what we've seen is the burning platform discussion stops at the top. So it's important to enable the leaders to cascade this down the organization. And how can you do it? You can do a variety of things. In one of the client examples, what we did was we created a half-an-hour training package on case for change and gave it to all the frontline managers and asked them to train their employees on that. So this is one of the things we did. In another client, what we did was we just introduced 3 questions to be asked in every review meeting at a functional leader level. So the functional leader had to ask 3 questions. How is this decreasing our cost? How is this helping us enter into new markets? Whatever, right? So this is going to continue to drive this message of burning platform down the organization. The second is about targets and incentives. More than everyone in the organization, and the leaders operate a lot based on their incentives, right? As in, there could be other motivations as you go down the organization, but for the leaders, one of the most important incentive is their own incentives. Yeah? I'm not talking about the senior most person who could be driven by passion and vision and so on and so forth. I'm talking about N-1 level leaders here. So what's important is, for these leaders, they already have their own targets. They are running their business as usual. They are busy with that. And now you're introducing a transformation. So if you put yourself in their shoes, they are feeling insecure. There is a transformation coming. I don't know about what's going to happen, about my position, my authority. I don't know how am I going to achieve this target as well, that target as well. So you will have to help them and also motivate them with right incentives to achieve the transformation targets. For that, you will have to first clarify, okay, so this is the transformation overall target, and leader 1, this is your target, leader 2, this is your target, and then there could be shared targets as well. So clarify this very clearly, and also introduce few new incentives which is linked to achieving only the transformation targets. Yeah? And the third point is a little bit linked to what I just said. As I said, they are feeling insecure, especially about their role in the organization, their position, their authority in the organization. And what does this result in? What will insecurity among leadership result in at the top? Pull down the top management, that's a bit of extreme, possible though. Chaos and confusion. It will cascade to the employees. It creates a lot of Chinese walls, it creates a lot of politics, right? They don't talk to each other. They will start hoarding information, right? And that's something we see in most change. So it's important to ensure at the leadership level, N-1 level, they are operating collaboratively. And how can you do this? The only way to do it is to bring them together, right? So you bring them together every quarter, discuss about the overall transformation target, what each of them is doing, how is it happening? Maybe you can include some transformation related training there. That's extremely important. It's super important for the leaders to come together frequently so that they can operate in a collaborative fashion. Yes. So let me interpret your question first. Just correct me if I understood correctly. So there could be existing friction among leaders before even the transformation is launched, and that's going to further decrease your chances of succeeding in transformation. How do you deal with the situation? That's your question. So the typical methodology to deal with it is to be able to surface this problem in a very transparent and objective way. And how do you do that? There are a lot of tools for this, right? One of the tools we've used frequently is a tool called FIRO-B. It's a psychometric instrument that's used to look at the teaming. And a lot of other leadership development companies like Center for Creative Leadership, they offer tools primarily to measure the teaming. And you can run one of these in the organization, and they will come, they will run it for you, they will conduct a series of workshops which will surface the issue, bring it to the table, and then they will also offer coaching to solve it. I think that's one of the solutions which is, I would say, non-intrusive without any change in roles. But of course, there are other possibilities where you can change the role, change the organization structure, change the scope of work of different leaders to solve it. But that's more extreme. But this is a more cleaner and non-intrusive way to solve it. And then I'll move on to the fourth point here, which is empowering change leaders. So the role of leaders, as I said, there is a bit of a parent-child analogy. So it's not only enough if the leaders themselves are changing their behaviors, but also they should be equipped with tools to change the behaviors of their employees. Yeah. In this, what I would like to show us a framework which we use frequently, and this is based on a study by Harvard Business School. Harvard Business School undertook a study on what it takes for a person to change their behavior successfully. Yeah. And they found this happens typically in 4 steps, and with each step, the odds of the leader or the person, it's not only applicable to leader, it also applies to every single person. Like if you want to, let's say, become more healthier and go for a jog every day morning, this will still apply to you, right? So, and the odds of success keeps increasing with each step. So it starts with making an action plan yourself. So what we normally do in such situations is, we bring the leaders together, we discuss the targets, we discuss the hard elements, the targets, the roles and responsibilities, and so on and so forth. And then we also discuss the behaviors that they would start doing, the new behaviors they would start adopting from the next day, and we create something called a leader action plan. It goes on to specify what will the leader change, when will he change it, where will he change it, what will be the triggers, right? For example, every week I will ensure I will go and visit the market once. I will always ask a question in my review meetings: how will our decisions impact the other departments, right? So it's very specific, and it is created by the leaders. That's step 1. Step 2 is, they have to socialize this to another set of people. And what we typically do is, we get the leaders to present this action plan to their team in one of the review meetings, where the leaders say, this is what I'm going to change, and I need you to observe me, and if you see I'm doing something else, you should come and tell me what I'm doing wrong. So that is the social commitment aspect of it. And the third is driving accountability in a social way. And here we adopt again a done to death but proven technique, which is having peers. So we create peers among leaders, and we calendarize meetings, 10-minute meetings, where they check in with each other on their leader action plans. And the final one, which is extremely important, as you see the curve is a little bit exponential here. So the odds of success keeps increasing exponentially as you take the further steps. It's important to define mechanisms to maintain them, to sustain them on this journey, because even the best of the leaders who really take this seriously and create extremely specific, extremely pragmatic actions will not sustain with it after a few weeks, because they are just busy with their own things. So offering them some support, most likely at a N-1 level, and executive coaching support really helps. Okay, I'll move on to the next one now, unless there are any questions. Okay, this is the most important element. It talks about engaging the people, keeping them motivated, so that they are adopting the new behaviors, they are living the change that you want to see in the organization. First and foremost learning here is, it's not a news that change is very difficult, right? Change is extremely taxing for the employees. They are already working on something, and you asking them to do something else in addition to the business as usual. It's very difficult for them, of course, right? But what a lot of organizations fail to do is, they fail to see how difficult it is becoming for the employees and demonstrate some form of empathy, saying, see, we understand you're going through this. We are here to take care of you. We are taking these initiatives to take care of you. And there are ways and methodologies to do it, which I will show in subsequent slides. So that is an extremely important aspect for employees to start buying into the change. Yeah. And the second is communication. What our study showed was the ratio of communication from the top management to employees versus employees to top management is a staggering 20:1. So there are 20 communications from top to the employee for every single communication from employee to the top during transformation, about transformation. Again, I think this is probably the status quo in a lot of your organization, right? But what's happening then, right? After a point, they'll stop listening. Like if you keep telling them X, Y, Z, then after a point, they'll not be listening. So it's very important to have some channels through which we also get feedback. We also let them communicate, let them talk about how they are feeling. Yeah? It could be simple things like survey, pulse checks, but this has to exist. And also what's important is to tell them that we've heard them. So what we also saw is even in these cases where there is one communication coming from the employees, the survey results come in, even if the analysis happens, the analysis is not shown to the employees. Then I think an important utility of that survey is lost. So once the survey is run for the employees, you analyze the results, show it to them. This is what you are saying, we have heard you, we are going to take actions to solve these issues. And that's an important aspect, not just run the survey, but also show the results. The third one is a bit of an obvious point, right? That similar to the parent-child relationship, there is also a sibling analogy happening. A lot of employees look people around them, typically the good performing, high performing people around them, and they follow them. If a lot of good performing people leave the organization, others also leave the organization. Yeah? So it's important before the transformation for you to identify who are your rock stars and find strategies to retain them, to make them your change agents. The fourth point is motivating the employees. There's a little bit of nuance here. So the original carrot and stick approach is I would not say it's not working, but there is a lot more science on motivation these days, which can be leveraged quite successfully for motivating employees. There's a lot of science around nudging employees, creating an environment where they feel nudged to do the right things, gamifying the whole experience so that they compete with each other. They in almost playful way, they are changing their behaviors, but without even they knowing it. Yeah. Some of this again will be demonstrated on one of the next slides, so I'll save it for that. And the last is upskilling. Again, it's an obvious point, but here it's not traditional training that helps the most. So if you are undertaking a transformation, and let's say if there are new technical capabilities to be built, of course training is required. But then if it's about changing the way people work, then you will have to do this on the job, right? So I'll give you an example. We worked on transformation for a fuel retailer. And one of the key elements of change is how the customer attendance in the fuel, in the petrol pump is behaving differently, because they were not being very customer friendly and they were being rude to customers, multiple issues. So now we have to change the behaviors of these people. And as you can imagine, a lot of these people are typically high school pass outs, many of them are not graduates, right? And they're not very tech savvy. I think you'll have to deal with them a little bit differently. What was happening though was there were trainings that were happening in similar, probably not in similar setup, but in classroom setups, right? Where these people were being trained on how they should treat the customer, how they should greet the customer, and so on and so forth. And what was happening here was the trainings were considered to be basically free lunches. So only, as in, people wanted to come because they get free lunch. However, the manager of the petrol pump doesn't want to send them because especially the good ones, because he knows it's useless. This is what's happening, right? And a lot of money being spent on this. The only thing we did was we shifted the training from classroom to the petrol pump. So the training was happening in the petrol pump, where there was a van with just videos, no trainer, videos explaining this is what they should do, because it's very simple things. It's not a very complicated, very simple, small actions that they have to do differently. So hardly, I think 60 minutes of videos played intermittently, and the sales officer himself is coaching the customer attendants on the shop floor, giving them feedback on the shop floor. Like, this is okay, you look at him, he's greeted well. Look at him, he's like, you are not doing this well, so you should do it better. And that showed a significant jump in the customer satisfaction scores already. Let me move on to show two quick slides on this one, and then we have just one more pillar, execution certainty. So I was talking about measuring the change load. There are again a lot of frameworks for this. I would encourage you to, if you just Google, you will find there's a lot of frameworks and surveys existing for measuring change load. So this is a framework that we are using. So we believe that a person's ability to change, which is the confidence, and a person's capacity to change is determining whether they will change or not. And based on that, we've categorized the people into 4 quadrants. Someone who is not having the capacity and also not having the confidence is struggling, right? And how will you treat with these people? You will probably train them, you will give them small tasks first, you will not trust them with major responsibilities. Yeah? If you move towards the right hand side, there could be people who is very confident, who thinks they can change, who thinks they can adopt the new behaviors, but they are not having bandwidth, they are having too much on their plate. How do you support them? By giving them more resources, by maybe changing the deadlines of work, job redesign, right? Taking some responsibilities from their plate and then adding more responsibilities. Let's go one step above. That could be people who actually has capacity, but they're not feeling confident. They don't want to change. They're hesitating. So how will you deal with these people? Coaching and mentoring, typically by the manager. And for that, of course, the manager has to be bought in. But the best thing that helps here is a little bit of manager oversight. Let me just complete this slide, I'll complete. Then, of course, you have the people who are thriving. So they have the capacity, they have the confidence. What do you do with these people? Yes, celebrate them, recognize them, make them as shining examples for others to follow. And I'm talking as if you change the approach to every single individual based on this framework. Practically, it doesn't happen that way. It happens in pockets, right? You will know your procurement department is largely in the striving area. Your finance department is mostly in the thriving area. And then you accordingly change your change interventions based on that. You had a question, sir? Yes, correct. Yeah. Okay. Then I'll move to a case study where I'll demonstrate how we ended up nudging and gamifying new behaviors. So this is, in fact, the same fuel retailer. So it's the same case study where the client is a fuel retailer. They had more than 25,000 pumps all around the country, and they undertook a major retail initiative, which included, I think, around 36 different initiatives, and all of these initiatives were customized depending upon whether the outlet is in rural area or urban area, tier 2, highway, and so on and so forth. And the burden of implementing all of these initiatives is falling on the field officers, who each of them had somewhere around 20 to 30 outlets under them, and they had to implement this. See, if you put yourself in their shoes, they have 36 different initiatives designed differently for different kinds of outlets. They have to understand it and they have to implement the right initiatives in the right way in each of these outlets. Super complex. Yeah. And they also don't have that much motivation to do this, because their incentives are not super aligned with this. Their incentives traditionally always has been meet the target. It's not to go and implement a customer attendant training, or a new introduce a branded fuel, right? So and so on and so forth, right? So how do you now make them change? So what was done was, we, along with the client, there was an app developed, and the app was designed in such a way that every week the app will tell to each field officer, these are the 3 things you have to do in this week. So we don't confuse them with 36 initiatives, blah blah blah, but these are the 3 things you have to do in this week. And they also have all the resources associated with those 3 things in the app itself. So they can click on it and then they can see, okay, so if it's about training the customer attendants, there is a methodology and content to train the customer attendants existing inside the app. If it's about convincing dealer about a new incentive scheme, all the details about the incentive scheme is existing within the app. And they can also say they've completed it on the app. Yeah. And now using this, you can gamify, because you can then say, in your region, 90% of the sales field officers have already completed their activities for this week, but you've not completed. So go and complete it. Right? And you can also track it at an aggregate level and measure progress and so on and so forth. In addition, there was also another element which was actually, which ended up becoming an extremely big success without we expecting it, was there was a social element added in the app, which is, if I don't know how to convince, if I'm struggling to convince my dealer on an incentive, I can ask other field officer how they did it. So it's a little bit like Slack, right? It's not random WhatsApp, but for this particular initiative, there is a chat happening. And that became a big success, because people could speak, people could show off, and so on and so forth. So what's happening here is, from a employee perspective, we just made it very easy for them. They are not confused about what they have to do. They know exactly what they have to do. And all the resources, training that's required for them to do those 3 small things is there in the app. And they had fun with this small gamification element. So that was working. So it's an example of using digital tools to nudge and gamify change among employees. Yeah, please. Good, very good question. Let me repeat the question for the audience. So her question is, gamification indirectly drives competition, and that is not healthy for organization. And she also added another question, which is, what do you do with people who are actually not winning the race, who are not moving forward with this, right? Okay. So a few points on that. The first is, one important thing when you gamify is to only celebrate the winners publicly, but don't talk about people who are not doing well. So there is no pressure, there is no penalty for not doing well, but if you are doing well, then you are celebrated, and you have a mechanism through gamification to do that. So that is one important thing that we have to keep in mind. The second thing is regarding the second question you said is regarding the people who did not adopt. So this is basically the people who are falling under the hesitance bracket, right? In the previous page, if you remember. So how do you can't deal with them by nudging. Nudging will not help them to change. You will have to deal with them a little bit through a combination of training and top-down pressure. So that's what we did. So we called them for additional training, and we also asked their managers to talk to them to adopt these behaviors. The tool acted as an input in this whole process, because the manager could now say, see, those two people are already adopting change, they're doing very well, look at their pumps, the pumps are doing very well, but yours is not doing well. Why don't you do this? Yeah. Did I answer your question? Because of this, not really. Because you are, see, if you are not doing well, this information is only with you. Nobody else knows you are not doing well. It's important for you to, of course, maintain that confidentiality. I agree with you. Yes, they know it, but they also probably know your pumps are not doing well, and like it's like any other performance metric, right? So, but okay, okay. Okay, I think the question is specific to a segment of population who can't work under pressure, right? If you don't mind, we will discuss this a little bit offline. Just to, I'm just realizing, I thought I'll definitely finish in 40 minutes, but I realize even I have gone a little bit over. So let me quickly finish this, and then yeah. Okay, the last one is executional certainty. I'm not going to do too much of a deep dive here, just in the interest of time. Because and also this is one of the things that most of the organization got right. It's about being able to track the change and progress in change and report the progress in change. It's also less relevant to HR team, but just to quickly touch upon it, it's important to put in place a clear governance. What are the initiatives? Who is the initiative owner? Who is the initiative sponsor? What are their roles? What's the role of the PMO team? It's very important to clarify all of this in a very transparent way across everyone. And you'll have to put in place a right transformation team. One of the common mistakes that I saw in not in this region but more in Asian regions is the non-performing employees were typically sent to the PMO team, which is the project management office team. Yeah. Because the key reason is the good performers are not let go by their seniors. Right? So that is something which you should avoid. It's important to have your rock stars in the transformation team. And then the final is reporting. The only point I want to highlight is there needs to be one source of truth. If there are different reports floating around regarding the progress of change, then it's very difficult for anyone to act on it. Maybe one other thing I would highlight is the report should be action oriented. It should be primarily red flags oriented, not just talking about successes. That's something we implement in most of the projects as well. So that's completing all the 4 pillars. Just to close the presentation. So it's important to take care of how, and it's important to remember that the how is intangible, and therefore the more you can specify it, measure it, track it, the more you can succeed across all the elements. Let me close with that. As I said, I'm available next room for any questions. I'm available here as well if she allows. 1 or 2 questions. Yes. So when you respond to when as an employee when I am responding to my feedback, how do I? Oh yeah, of course you should. No, no, okay, good question. So you're asking when we take feedback from the ground, how do you respond to it? So ideally, you respond with these are the actions, right? As in that's how you should respond. But also the response time is important. If you are going to take 1 quarter to finalize the response actions, you are better off just telling them, we've heard you, this is what you're telling us, watch out this space, we are going to take actions to respond to you. In fact, I remember an example where what we did is we made this as a periodic communication. First communication was we heard you, this is the problem. We are going to give you more. Initiative 1, Initiative 2, Initiative 3. Every month there was something coming, some good news coming to them throughout the transformation so that there's some bit of positive energy happening because of it. Last question, I guess. And I'm available next room. Yeah. Question is, how do you relate succession planning with transformation? So the key relation I can think of there, I'm telling you right off the thing. So the key relation I can think of it, that is the critical roles for which you're doing succession planning will change. I'm assuming here you already have a succession planning system put in place. With transformation, your definition of critical roles will change. So you might, they're asking me to get out. Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's probably it. Yeah. You have a question? Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about the song. Okay. 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 Very nice. Okay. Very nice. Yes. Yes. Yeah. So how do you make leaders accept initiatives related to softer aspects? How do you make them give time for coaching, for example, right? The key is in your targets and incentive alignment. So the leaders, as I said, are primarily they are motivated by their incentives. So if they are very clear that I have to achieve these additional targets, for me to get these additional incentives and for me to achieve these additional targets, I need these X, Y, Z things, and for that I need coaching, they will come for coaching. Right? So that I think that aspect is extremely important. Sorry? When I say incentive here, it's incentive for himself, for the leader themselves. As leaders, most of the leaders are motivated by their incentives, both monetary, non-monetary, promotion, career prospects, etc., etc. But that's their most important motivational factor. Yeah, yeah, very well articulated. Okay, thanks a lot for your time, and you have been a very patient and great audience. Thank you.